Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Steele. I'm the chair of the Department of Educational Studies here in Teachers College at Ball State University. On behalf of the department, the college, and the entire university, we want to thank you for hosting student teachers at your institution. We know hosting student teachers is a sacrifice of time, energy, and it's critically important to the future of teacher preparation to have you all and your schools involved in supporting our new teachers. Ball State is the top preparer of teachers in the state of Indiana, so we're confident that we're going to be able to send you the best and brightest new teachers to work with your mentor teachers at your school. I'm going to turn it over now to our Practicum instructors who are going to tell you a little bit more about the Practicum experience.
Welcome to the participation sequence of courses. We are delighted that you are interested in working with our students, and we want to provide as much support as we can.
Just as a quick differentiation between EDJH 385 and EDSEC 380, most of our secondary and all grade students will take both series of Practicum courses, 385 being working within the middle schools and 380 working in the high schools. The rest of this video will be an introduction to the expectations of both our students and our mentor teachers.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kathy Siebert. I've been at Ball State since 1999, and my primary undergraduate teaching responsibilities have been the secondary Practicum sequence. I started as an English teacher, 9th grade. I've taught English at the community college level, and then I've taught undergraduate and graduate classes here at Ball State for the last 20 plus years.
Hi, I'm Deanne Taggart. I have been in the classroom for 21 years. I served as a director of professional learning at an educational service center for 8 years. And I've been a central office administrator for 2 years, director of curriculum and technology. I decided to pursue my doctorate here at BSU and am now grad assistant to Dr. Siebert. I'm happy to be here.
My name is Dr. Eric Shaver. I taught high school social studies for 6 years in Indianapolis. After that, I went and got my PhD from IUPUI in urban education. I've been here at Ball State teaching not only the Practicum sequence, but other courses in our foundations and multi-call sequences for 6 years now. And again, pleasure working with you this semester.
I am Dr. Elisa Grady, and I have been at BSU now for entering my second year. Prior to coming here, I taught high school science for 15 years in Texas and got my PhD in STEM, global STEM education.
Hello again, I'm Cresta Hancock. I came to Ball State 8 years ago. Prior to that, I taught at Muncie Community Schools, all things science. Here I teach the Practicum courses, intro courses, multicultural courses, and I am also working on a PhD currently in urban education.
So one thing I wanted to explain, we all wanted to explain to you really quickly, was sort of like the overall context of the course. I know that you see our students in your classroom, but I feel like it's really important to sort of understand why we want them to create that reciprocal relationship between the university and obviously your teaching spaces, then the communities hopefully they'll serve in the future when they are teachers. First and foremost, this is the first real teaching experience that a lot of our students will have had. So they are now either second semester sophomores, juniors, or seniors, depending on what time they're entering the Practicum sequence. So for many of them, they've gotten theory, but no chance to really apply it. So the overall goal that we want to see them do is take that theory, put it into practice, get really sort of sharpening their own sort of approach to teaching, and engage that praxic thought that we know is sort of the cornerstone of good professional teaching. In addition, the other thing we really wanted to talk to you all about a little bit was the outcome. What do we want to see? We want to see these students in your classroom really develop and understand these skills, to really engage in that thinking and engage with you and your students as they learn the ropes on how to do this. Now, overall, there's some differences between what we want to see in terms of the overall end goal of our EDJH 385 and EDSE 380 students into the semester. For EDJH, we do have some exceptions with students needing to take out of sequence, but these are students, again, who have not been in a classroom before. The goal for them is by the end of the first rotation to teach 1 to 3 of your lessons that you have designed. But by the end of EDJH, the second rotation, they are teaching a 3 to 5 week unit plan or teaching sequence of their own design. EDSE 380, however, they have had teaching experience. So our goal is for them from jump to get used to you, your classroom, your students, and teach as much as possible. Hopefully by the end of second rotation, they have taught between a 2 and 3 week unit plan or lesson sequence as much as possible before they engage and leave, because the next step that a lot of them will have is their student teaching. Overall, though, the most important thing that we really want to stress is this is a reciprocal relationship. We want to make sure that you don't feel put upon, that we're not just parachuting in and leaving without help. Please engage in a dialogue with us over anything that you need to help and support, particularly when our students are hopefully really deeply engaging in this project-based approach to problem solving that we'll touch on a little bit later in the video. But please, we're open doors, communicate with us. We want this to be a reciprocal relationship.
So we discussed a little bit about the goals of the class. The goals of our students are to develop competency. And what we mean by that is we don't only want them to be competent educators using best practices that are current, but also competent in their discipline. So there's kind of a dichotomy there of looking at both things, both teaching as a whole and teaching in their discipline. Now, additionally, we have to grade this competency level, we have a portfolio assessment that they'll be completing. And we encourage them to have your involvement in that portfolio and what to include and what not to include. They have a list of those things, but like I said, getting your involvement in that process as well. Hopefully, a lot of what they will include aligns with EdTPA requirements that they will be needing to do once they graduate, or for them to graduate, so that there is an alignment with EdTPA as well.
I get the opportunity to, again, thank you for taking the additional responsibility of working with our participation students. We are very cognizant of the fact that this represents additional work and time for you, and we want to be as supportive of that as possible. So we have pretty high expectations for their attendance and performance out in the field. First of all, they are expected to attend every day to your classroom. If there is something going on where something happens, they get sick, if it's something that they can tell you about in advance, one of the things we ask you to do right up front is to talk with them about how they should contact you. Would you want to get an email? Do you want them to text you? It's kind of old school, but maybe phone the school to let you know that they're sick or they're not going to be in. This also goes to if there's something that happens the day of. So if they're on the way to the placement and they have a flat tire or they get, God forbid, a car accident, how should they communicate with you that they're not going to be there? Attendance is mandatory. We emphasize as much as we can with them that being in your classroom, working with your students, working with you is a privilege. And so we expect them to be there on time and to stay for the full length of the periods they've been assigned to be with you. We understand that occasionally things will happen where they may need to leave a little early, but they should always talk with you about that in advance and not just spring it on you. So the expectations, Dr. Schaefer mentioned them a little earlier, but to go over it again, in the first rotation of field time, the participants are expected to teach 1 to 3 lessons from your planning, from within what you have planned for the curriculum at that time. Again, if it's the 380 students, they have taught before in 385, so they may be ready to take on a little bit more responsibility, and that's totally up to you in consultation with the participant. We don't want to throw anyone in at the deep end, but we also don't want to hold anyone back if they're ready to move forward. So the minimum is 1 to 3 lessons from your curriculum that you've planned for the first rotation. Then for the second rotation, the minimum is 3 to 5 lessons of curriculum from within what you're teaching, so they can't just choose to teach about dinosaurs because they like dinosaurs. Whatever you're teaching, 3 to 5 lessons that they could be responsible for planning and implementing instruction. Now, keep in mind, we don't expect you to leave the classroom. In fact, we don't want you to leave the classroom. So co-teaching is perfectly acceptable, and we have some resources available on our website for co-planning and co-teaching. But the second rotation teaching, we would really like to see what they can do in terms of planning and implementing instruction. We want to have them jump in as quickly as possible, and we want them to begin building relationships with your students as soon as possible. So they should be starting to learn student names from, as Dr. Schaefer would say, from jump, the minute they walk in the classroom.
Yeah, those practicum students that are in your classroom, no matter their major, they should really embrace the topic or the subject area of the classroom, the discipline. They are learning more than just that subject matter, and they are learning the art of teaching, that pedagogy, the ins and outs. And this is really their application of what they've learned over these years at Ball State. And also, when speaking of reflection and feedback loops, we want those to be as open as possible and as consistent as possible. That really contributes to really one of the better experiences that both you and the practicum students will experience.
And I would just add to that we work very hard to place our secondary participants in their content areas. But occasionally you might have a social studies person whose main areas are not economics, but they're in an econ class. But again, we try very hard to get them with the content that they're preparing to teach, with some exceptions. So I really support what Deanne said about they should embrace whatever it is, and they should be prepared to teach whatever it is that they're experiencing while they're with you. The final thing we wanted to talk about is that with both 385 and 380, there's an end of semester project. This is a big project that they'll begin working on with us in the first chunk of time on campus. They will be doing some fact-finding, information gathering during the first rotation in the field. They'll come back to us, we will do some more scaffolding of the project, and then they will complete the project during the second rotation in the field. You really don't have any responsibility for that project, but we would like to encourage our participants to talk with you in coming up with the topics they're going to pursue, in gathering information, who they might want to talk to in schools. So they may come to you to talk about that end of semester project, and we just wanted to let you know up front about that.
As Dr. Siebert mentioned earlier, sometimes issues might come up in the classroom in terms of placements. We do start trying to make placements very early on. For the fall, we start generally at the 1st of July. One of the issues that may come up is you may be asked to host a student that is not within your content area for a variety of reasons. Our first priority is to get students placed in classrooms that is their content major, but that's not always going to happen. So please be aware of that. Other issues that might pop up, we may have students that need to make it back to campus. And with our schedules being different than your schedules, they may have to leave class a little early or come to class a little late. That is something that they definitely need to communicate with you early on. And that's not something that needs to be taken advantage of. So if they have to leave for class, that's one thing. But if they have to leave for some other reason, communication is really key. All of our students will come to you having completed a criminal background check. Those are done each year. They're good for one academic year, as well as the EDURISK training. And then any additional procedures that you might have in place at your school, so additional background checks, or if they have to raptor in, or those types of things. Any other issues that might pop up, we first like you to work with the student and communicate with the student. If that's not resolving the issue, any or all of us are welcome or are happy to come out to your classrooms to talk with you and the student, whatever it takes. Another thing to keep in mind, again, is just that open communication. So 2-hour delays, professional development days. If you're having a sub and you don't necessarily want your student in the room on that particular day, it's your classroom. And so all of those things are up to you first, and we just ask that they are communicated with the student.
So one thing that comes up a lot is how do we make these placements? Well, one thing we just want to be open and honest about is we have 150-ish placements to make this semester. And given that the Muncie context won't necessarily fit 150 kids, we really need to reach out and branch out. So how do we begin going about making these placements? Well, we start in the summer. We've already been in communication with a lot of the principals to not only gauge interest of teachers like you that may or may not want a student this semester, but we're starting to look at things too, like master class lists if they're already being produced and put out there. We have all of our practicum students, hopefully all of them, because some of them don't end up filling it out, fill out a questionnaire that lets us know when they have availability during the day. Are they working? Do they have transportation? Are they willing to carpool? What interests them in terms of a final project? From then, we start trying to make placements that, like earlier that Dr. Siebert was talking about, that best fits them. One of the interesting things about this class is we actually have a 2-hour block of time that we schedule and block out every day of the week, Monday through Friday. So we hopefully will get them a time that meshes and mixes well within that time frame that we have them for class on the university, so the transition is seamless. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. We may have to put them in something that's outside our time frame. We may have to accommodate for issues like a lack of transportation. Obviously, if we were not going to make a student that doesn't have a car drive all the way to Pendleton, unless there's a ride share available there. So that's another thing we have to take into consideration when we're going about making the placement issues. One of the other issues that we have is a potentiality involving just, we talked about earlier, a mismatch in what the students teach and just available teaching. One example that tends to come up a lot is we have a dearth of theater education students given the performance arts background of Ball State. And in the end, we're not going to be able to find 30 to 40 theater education placements on a given year. So we see these students who have a chance to say, okay, if you don't get your major, your number one, what's your backup? So we'll see theater education students in English education classrooms, social studies classrooms, and so forth. So that's another thing we have to consider when doing it, is just the availability of classrooms that fit the major.
All right, so we've talked about various expectations. We'd like to talk about the expectations we have for our classroom teachers leading these students. And the biggest one is just the openness and opportunity for the students to come into your classroom and you share that space. Now, we also are aware that this is your space, and we tell our students that this is your classroom and not something for them to come in and try to take over. So they need to be communicating with you on procedures that they may ask if they can change or do in their lesson. They're not expected to by any means change your procedures as a whole. Along those lines, the biggest thing that you can do is to mentor them. Tell them the ins and outs of daily classroom things. Being a classroom teacher is so much more than just teaching students. So it's submitting those lesson plans and looking at those lesson plans to see if the times work, things along those lines. In doing so, we ask that you provide feedback both daily when they're in when you're in your classroom and weekly. Give them feedback on what they submit to you, the lessons that they teach, how they're interacting with their students. And then provide them feedback on the lessons that they are looking at in a formal matter in your discipline. Additionally, we'd like you to ask if there are any problems that you run into, that you communicate those with us. We have a Google form that we will be sending out, and I believe is available on the website as well, that you will complete twice within the semester, but it is available if you need it additionally. You'll want to communicate with our pre-service teachers regarding the end of class project, what works, what doesn't work. Some of the lessons that they may need to incorporate need to include special needs. And so having those type of materials available as much as you can is also beneficial to them. And then they'll have an end of semester evaluation for them that you'll hopefully communicate with them and walk them through why you're giving them the quote unquote grade, the level that you are giving, and how they can improve on that. And then finally, again, if you have any issues throughout the semester, but especially at the end as far as them going out on their own, because a lot of times this is the last class before they start their student teaching. And so if there are huge issues, hopefully those are communicated throughout the semester, but at the end of the semester as well.
We'd like to share in this part of the video a little bit about what you can expect from us, those faculty that are working with those students, those practicum students that you'll be interacting with. First, there will be certainly times for reflection and space, and we're going to encourage students that are out in the field during these 2 rotations to interact with you, to learn and grow and find those positive moments as much as possible in putting their theory and the ideas they've learned into practice. Also, we'll be enforcing deadlines throughout the semester and gently nudging and helping all of those students to just meet those deadlines and to stay on track.
Something that we're not trying new this semester, but that we have sort of agreed to as practicum faculty is to try to make at least one observation of our participants in your classroom. To make that happen, it may not necessarily be their practicum professor that is observing them, which is one of the reasons we did this because we wanted you to see all of us. We might also have an additional graduate assistant or 2 who might be making observations simply because we have significant numbers this fall to get to, and they will be placed in a number of different schools. So expect to see someone at least once with your participant, and in some cases more. If there's ever any concern that you have, please do not wait to reach out to one of us. We can always do additional observations if we need to. We are certainly available to come out and talk with you if you're seeing red flags. We don't want to wait until the end of the semester if you're noticing things that will potentially mean that they're not going to succeed. So please do feel free to reach out to us at any time. We will be doing note-taking during our observations, and we will be leaving some form of written feedback. Each of us might do that a little differently, but we should be communicating with you in some way as to what we saw and how we assessed and interacted with our participant about what we saw. You will be receiving from us reminders about evaluations, reminders about the Google form that you can fill out. As Dr. Grady said, you can do that at any time. But there are a couple times in particular where we're going to trigger you and hopefully ask you to fill that out. Again, if there are any major issues, please communicate with us as soon as possible. We're all pretty skilled at negotiating conflict, and at the end of the day, we are all in the business of ensuring that we're not putting people in classrooms that don't belong there. And so you are a critical component of that in terms of helping us identify perhaps early that there are significant things that we need to be paying attention to, but the burden for dealing with that should fall on us, not necessarily on your shoulders.
In the spirit of multiple modes of representation, not only have you received a lot of this information via email, we've created this video, we also have a website that is available to you with all of these pieces and parts of information, along with links to the rubrics you will use for student evaluations, the Google form links, if there are communication issues, those types of things. So please reference the graphic for the website, or that's also been sent to you via email.
So just in general, we want to do one last overview of the dates that we'll be doing, or just the general process of what this will look like. There will be 2 rotations for this practicum experience where they will be with us on campus before the first rotation. They will go to your classroom for an extended amount of time. They will then come back to us for a second stretch of time for classroom experience and teaching before they go back out to the field for the second rotation with y'all. Now, just a couple things in terms of dates. You'll notice all the relevant dates and times will be posted on the website, as again, that will vary from year to year given the academic calendar. The goal is we will try and get them out as fast as possible if we have the opportunity to do so. We will try to get them out at least before the rotation starts to have an orientation day with you to meet you, greet you, see your classroom space. Hopefully we can get that done. A lot of that applies on some moving parts. And in addition, if there's something that comes along like a snow day or something else, given anything that disrupts the schedule, normally the way that it happens with attendance is 2-hour delays. Students won't have to make it up. Days that are off, they won't have to make up either. But again, that only happens in really certain circumstances. Other than that, if you have any questions, particularly around things like professional development days or days that your corporation wants students to come in, that's fine. Just communicate with that with your students.
Just to wrap things up, our students will be seeing you for a small chunk of time. Usually it's 2 class periods. That may vary if you are on block schedule. They're not out there for the full day, but we do want to, again, extend our thanks. And if you have any additional questions, each of us are available. You have our contact information, and we hope to have a great semester reciprocating, learning both and growing.